Welcome everyone to my Universe Reviews, and here is another episode covering the Arrowverse. The first thing we're doing here is covering the first set of episodes of Arrow Season 3, and from there we are going to do a video on the crossover event, covering both the episodes from each show. So, with that said, let's jump into Arrow Season 3. And if you have not seen my other reviews for this, please go check them out. It will be highly beneficial, especially at this point. I have reviewed and recapped all of Season 1 of Arrow, all of Season 2 of Arrow, and by this point, the Flash episodes 1 through 7 have been reviewed, and here we are to the 1 through 7 here. So, let's jump into this! Episode 1, Flashbacks. They really pertain to Oliver trying to escape every chance he gets to Amanda Waller's control, like she wants him to work for her, and Maceo, the man trying to keep Oliver from escaping, finally gets to him to see the weight of his actions every time he escapes. In present time, things are pretty simplistic. Until they're not. Starting us off, Oliver has less to worry about as the Starling City Police calls off the task force against Arrow. To add further upbringings, Oliver asks Felicity on a date, and Diggle is going to have a baby with his ex-wife, Lila. On top of that, Quentin Lance becomes captain of the Central City Police. Things are looking pretty good. That is until a Werner Zeil, or Zeidel, I might have gotten that name wrong, is a new placeholder over the Vertigo hallucinogenic drug, decides to track down the Arrow, and he stays on top of him as he ruins Oliver's first date with Felicity, drugs him into a later tussle, and a newly promoted Quentin Lance is sent to the hospital again. But that's not all, my friends. Oliver tries to get Queen Consolidate back, only to lose it over Ray Palmer. Right now, he's just known as a businessman, but you may recognize him as this guy. But we're gonna keep an eye on him, even though in retrospect, I know what he becomes. I'm just gonna play dumb for right now, because they wouldn't just have a former Man of Steel come into the Arrowverse for no reason. What gets complicated is during the final battle against Jeremy, Sara shows up to help Oliver, but Sara's return back to Starling City is extremely short-lived, as she has only a moment to say hello to Laura before an unknown assailant kills Sara and she falls to her death. Episode 2! In the wake of Sara... I'm going to leave it there. In the wake of Sara's death, Oliver and crew track down the person who did this. Ultimately catch the person using the same MO, but it's not anyone important, so the real killer is still out there. But Laurel takes matters into her own hands by questioning one of the people the assassin failed to kill, and of course, we are starting to see where Laurel's story arc is starting to go. Stay. Thea is brought up several times in this episode as she is unreachable to Oliver and Roy until Roy reveals a letter to Oliver that Thea left town after she learned that Roy was working for the Arrow. Within that time, we find out that Thea has been training with Malcolm. Flashbacks show Oliver trying to find another way to get rid of his best friend Tommy Merlin, who's in Hong Kong trying to look for Oliver. Episode 3! This is more Thea-driven plot as Oliver and Diggle head out to Corto Maltese to find Thea and bring her back home. Unaware Thea has been trained by Malcolm, this side of the story takes a back seat in plot-driven contrivances and keeps the personal side up front and true. Back in Starling City with things heating up for Laurel as she feels restless yet driven to find Sara's killer even after the trail went cold. Following up on what leads she finds herself at odds with a different personal story that leads her into a direction of possibly taking up the mantle of the Canary. Oliver refuses to help her, but Laurel puts her trust into a boxer to help improve her fighting skills. Nessa shows up threatening Oliver and Roy at Arrow Point, wanting to know the location of Sara. And flashback free from Oliver's standpoint, but Thea gets flashbacks of Malcolm training her and where she was from the moment that she went to go and meet up with Malcolm. Episode 4. In this intense episode, we have several people after one man, Malcolm Merlin. Believed to have killed Sara, everyone does what they can to bring him out in the open. Finding out Sara was back in Starling City to kill Malcolm, all signs point to this being the end-all be-all. Downside is, Malcolm never killed Sara. As Nyssa shows up to avenge Sara's death, she plays the difficult role of a grieving lover and avenger who killed her. This proves difficult when Oliver meets up with Malcolm and realizes he ain't the killer. Ra's al Ghul is. Nyssa's father. Thea isn't exactly telling the truth to anyone else either, even though Oliver and Thea promised no more secrets. She doesn't tell anyone she knows all of what's going on. Flashbacks have Oliver in Hong Kong still figuring out why he's tasked to kill people with no reason. He finds out last year Edward Fryer's actions to blow up a plane was more than expected. Under orders of Fryer's, he was told by Willa to blow up the plane. The original intention to kill Chen, who was on that plane. Chen is kind of an afterthought as a villain in seasons 1 and 2. She's just a leader of a drug cartel in the present day storylines. Here in season 3, she is mentioned and believed at this point to be the next big villain. Ra's al Ghul makes his appearance in this episode and declares the Arrow an enemy. And I know that it's either Ra's al Ghul or Raz, and it's alternated between the two of these. Episode 5. Another supporting character-driven episode featuring Felicity. After being absent in the last episode, because that's when she was in Central City seeing Barry, gotta love continuity. So after her return home, she is blindsided by Ray Palmer's unexpected visit to her house, and also her mother? While these two characters are balanced throughout the episode in humorous and clever ways, the emotional core is understanding where Felicity came from. Being a hacktivist with an overly ambitious boyfriend ends up coming back to haunt her as a virus that was written by Felicity 5 years ago ends up being a big plot point. Laurel continues to train with the boxer Ted. Thea is moving up in the world despite Oliver's objections using Malcolm's money, and Ray starts dreaming he killed Sara. Episode 6. When a murderer is killing rival gang members, Arrow's trail leads him straight to Ted's gym. Ted becomes suspect to these murders, and Arrow believes that Ted is the culprit. But there is more to Ted than meets the eye, as a determined Laurel believes Ted is innocent. The end result parallels with Oliver and Roy. As one end of the story, Ted deals with the fact that as a former vigilante himself, he has an apprentice that went too far. He left him behind because of his actions. This apprentice is one going around killing people. On the flip side, Roy deals with the fact that he may have possibly killed Sara. This shakes the team up on how to deal with him, since Laurel knows as well about what Roy believes he did. The flashbacks even come into play when Oliver loses sight of a courier who is killed in the pursuit, who is an associate of Chen's. Masio kind of helps Oliver remember, but even though the wife really doesn't like Oliver, it really parallels to the story at hand and the personal ambitions and worries that these characters all have. So this is a very connected episode. Roy never did kill Sara, but an officer, and Roy is only remembering it now due to the Mirakuru serum having a delayed effect on him as his suppressed memories resurface. And now, episode 7. In the end of episode 6, a new character, Cupid, as if there wasn't enough already, show up assassinating Ted's former apprentice. Now, Cupid is taking her victims and dressing them up like the Arrow. In flashbacks from the previous episode, they retrieved the message and found it was a command to contact Lee Kuan Hui. Masio leaves to follow up on that lead in this episode. However, he does not come back, which makes Masio's wife worried, and also Oliver. And the end result? Masio's fine. Cupid proves to be a problem throughout this episode, mostly because she was obsessed with the Arrow the day he saved her during Slade Wilson's attack in season 2. And if there's one thing that I am actually impressed with in this episode, is the soundtrack. Me likey. Cupid's fate is resolved as she is taken and placed within the ranks of the Suicide Squad, believing that her talents would benefit that team. And episode 8, well, you all know what episode 8 is. It's crossover time! This is where I'm going to end the episode of Universe Reviews. Next episode will be covering the crossover event, as these two episodes are standalone within their own season, but I'm going to review it together. I would really like for this series of Universe Reviews to be a part of your world. So if you can please hit that like button if you enjoyed this, subscribe to help further the cause, to continue doing more reviews and recaps like this. My next recap review will be on the crossover of Flash vs. Arrow. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time.